name is Paul Rose. I'm the Global Product Centre of Excellence Manager for Employee Central. I work with Aasonn. Aasonn are the most experienced SAP SuccessFactors implementation partner. We have two sides to the business, so we have an implementation, system implementation, and we also have Aasonn as a service. In terms of my experience, I work primarily with organisations who are looking to deploy HR systems in the cloud, and most notably Employee Central. So Employee Central is a core HR system of record, and it has really become very, very popular in the past 2 to 3 years, especially for companies looking to shift from the on-premise HR model to the cloud service. Companies see this and they want to ensure that they're not left behind. An integrated platform means that the core HR talent modules such as learning, performance and compensation are all sitting on the same platform, and the potential for HR analytics thus is endless. A lot of customers also face the challenge of integrating that core HR data from the cloud back into an ERP system, and potentially for cost center information which is used in the finance sphere, or maybe approval information data flows that is needed for purchasing also. I think I'd like to talk a little bit about payroll. Whilst we're seeing a lot of organizations moving their HR, their core HR and their talent applications to the cloud, payroll has taken maybe a more of a conservative route, and there's several reasons for this. Clearly everyone needs to get their paycheck at the end of the month, so there's more risk attached to payroll. From a cloud standpoint, we have such offerings like Employee Central Payroll and ADP Global View. So that really, those types of cloud payroll offerings, I'm sure we'll see many companies utilize these applications over the next couple of years. Yeah, there's some very important critical considerations that need to be taken into account. I'm speaking from a core HR context as well, because that is what I know and that's my experience. So it's vital that a global organization structure is defined, and it's defined quite early on in the implementation process to ensure sufficient regression testing and potentially impacts to the other modules like recruiting or onboarding. So a lot of these applications are configurable. A lot of these cloud applications are configurable and not customizable. So that's an important to take into account. It's very important that a company has global definitions for their data, so common global data definitions. Otherwise, people in certain regions are going to be talking about fields and sections that are not quite, it's not quite the standard terminology across the business. So the data definitions, that these will need to be defined in the implementation process, and a type of data dictionary will need to be built in. And a lot of the times this may be defined in the workbooks, so there might be detailed Excel workbooks, so for every field level there will be a type of description, and certainly for any custom fields that an organization decides to put in, they'll need to put some context around that so that everyone across the business understands their meaning. It's important that companies are committed to core HR, or to the cloud core HR application as one master of truth. In my experience, I've seen some companies look to integrate maybe into a SuccessFactors or integrate into a Workday their core HR master data. But looking from a recommended practice standpoint, you really want your core HR system to be the master system of truth, and for that data, for data flows to come and to be pushed out to your time, your benefits, your payroll solution as well. Another important talking point is for the company to consider their long-term HR shared services model. Is that a viable option? Perhaps the business is happy with the way their HR operations are structured at present, but if they are looking to utilize potentially a HR shared service model in the next 3 to 5 years, well, it's important to design the system as such, and again to look to streamline your security structures and your global template, so that a shift from a standard HR operating model to a HR shared services is achievable. Another important note is around your job structures and position structures, as well as the association then, which are pay structures and compensation. It's important that companies undertaking this shift to a global HR system, really work hard pre-implementation on establishing a job catalogue and even detailing that out into a position catalogue as well. Also the association with your pay structures, pay grades, pay ranges. This is important work that needs to take place in preparation of the system deployment. Look to consolidate workflows also at a global level where possible. There'll always be those country specific aspects to the business that need to be taken into account, whether that's an on-premise model or a cloud system, but it's important to look to really standardize those high level HR changes like hire, termination, pay change, job change, and any position change then as well. Yeah, read the security structures. This is probably an area I feel quite passionate about because I see so many companies getting it wrong. It's not an easy piece of functionality to rework as well. So to get the design right, it's important that it's achieved in the implementation process. So we're looking to establish one employee self-service role, one manager self-service roles, and you will have your various HR roles, whether that be at a HR admin level, HR business partner, HR director, maybe you have your HR shared services piece as well. What you also will have is you'll have IT roles, facilities roles and purchasing roles, but you do not want to have overlap across regions, you don't want to have overlap across functions. You're looking to streamline and consolidate those security roles where possible. Yeah, it's quite interesting. A lot of the companies that I've worked with that have had no global platform before, so that is no global HR on-premise model like an SAP HCM or a PeopleSoft, they are perhaps a lot more receptive to recommended practice and to really looking at HR process holistically. Sometimes companies moving from an on-premise model, they have their set processes, their structured processes in place, and they may have customizations in the legacy system. They may not be inclined to undertake that HR transformation. And that HR transformation is really looking at that, redesigning your HR processes and using this cloud technology, SuccessFactors, Workday, as a potential enabler for their business. Integrations are a real key lessons learned. Many companies don't seem to focus on the integration requirements until maybe later on in the project, and that really affects the project success. It's important, especially from a payroll viewpoint, that the payroll requirements and the integration from a core HR to a payroll system are defined quite early on in the core HR implementation process. Another consideration, another real critical lesson that I've learned in my experience is the data migration piece. Data migration often takes a lot longer than one may imagine. So it's, there's different options. Companies can hire an external consultant, and there are a lot of specialist data migration organizations that can help a company shifting onto a new cloud platform such as SAP SuccessFactors. Perhaps you can hire internal HRIS analysts, data analysts as well that can work in this piece as well. They need to have an understanding around the mapping from an on-premise model, or maybe it's just from Excel spreadsheets if the company did not have a consolidated HR platform before. So they really need to have that the technical mindset, but also the understanding of HR data as well. From a data migration and a data import viewpoint, it's recommended that you would not bring over historical data. There's various reasons for that, but in terms of a recommended practice, I would not recommend bringing over more than 12 to 18 months of historical data. It's a good opportunity to get the data validation, or to actually cleanse the data in the source system and bring over the most current, accurate data. And I think that's an important discussion point for organizations who are shifting to the cloud. One more critical lesson I've learned, and it's a really crucial piece of the puzzle, you could say, is to have that global person, the person with the global mindset if it is a global deployment. This is the person that needs to actually make that final decision. You will have various regional stakeholders coming together and looking to give their input from having to build those requirements from the various regional areas in the business to a global template. But ultimately you need that global decision maker. Maybe it's one, maybe it's two, but to actually say, stop, we're going to enforce the global template, we're going to look to utilize best practice as much as possible, and that might just be for something like a termination workflow or like a job change across the business. Can we standardize? The extensive effort required in a global HRIS implementation. So it's very important that the customer works in tandem with their implementation partner. The implementation partner should be able to give a recommended resource project plan to the customer, and they should be able to leverage this and plan their resources accordingly. Change management. So whether it's a customer moving from an on-premise model or a customer moving from no global HR platform, it's very important that the change management initiative is applied, and that skilled change management resources from the implementation partner and also internally are engaged within the business. So in terms of consistency in data definition, for global organizations, I've seen this quite a challenging exercise. Data elements need to mean the same thing across the globe. So for example, permanent versus temporary, full-time versus part-time, the definition, the terminology needs to mean the same thing across the business. And that's where you can work with your implementation partner to establish that and make sure to have that documented where in a place that can be easily accessed. Another challenge is matching the process and the HR processes that a company have to their technology. As well, some implementation partners will focus very much just on the workbook, and they won't dig deep into the customer's process. And that's current state, what they're currently using in terms of their HR infrastructure. But it's future state. Once the new cloud system is engaged, when SuccessFactors is engaged, how will your HR processes look from a future state perspective, not just in the system but out of the system also. Another challenge is a lot of organizations, they may lack that future state HCM vision. So what do they want their HR applications, their HR infrastructure to look like in 5 to 7 years time? And that often happens when there may be a global head of HRIS who does not have that vision into the future as well. So it's important, I think, most significantly is to have someone at the global level with that prerogative, which is to build a future state HRIS infrastructure that's going to meet the business needs. Another challenge can be dealing with works councils. So it's important to engage early within the process, within the implementation process, and give clear, concise communication to the work councils, especially in places like Germany and France. And I think that is going to really drive success in the system deployment. One key one is a skilled implementation partner. Then we're looking for a really capable and resilient project manager from the customer standpoint. Also important to have experienced HRIS data analysts if data migration is going to be completed internally. An experienced cloud project manager from the implementation standpoint as well. From the customer standpoint, to have that global HRIS expert. We have a global reporting and analytics team to look to build that in quite early in the implementation process. Some companies think about reporting as an afterthought, but they should be fully engaged throughout the system implementation and really looking at the requirements towards certainly towards the end of the first iteration or first phase of the project. Also the change and communications expert is key as well for the cloud effort. At Aasonn, we recommend creating an internal governance model with 3 tiers of responsibility. So maybe a steering committee at the top level to set direction and maintain alignment with larger organization goals. We'll also have project sponsors who will raise awareness and maintain alignment between the functional areas and the business. And then there's the project team itself, which will be responsible for driving project success, constant involvement with decision making, and representing the project, and a huge representative of project stakeholders as well, from IT to functional areas and maybe facilities and purchasing also. A comprehensive, considered user adoption strategy would positively impact on the likelihood of success of a project. There are various pieces within the strategy then that I can refer to and I can discuss. So it's important to develop a clear and meaningful communication plan. It's vital to engage stakeholders quite early on in the project, and look to tailor the solution around the employee self-service and manager self-service capabilities. Important to keep the application simple and quite attractive, easy to use, and make it as easy to use as booking a flight or using Facebook or Twitter. Training documentation is key. Often stakeholders will forget how they were trained or how to do such a simple task, and whilst it's good to have the application simple and attractive, training documentation for the more complex pieces of the system will be important. It's important to track adoption levels, and certainly in the first 3 to 6 months of the system deployment going live, it's really going to be a key variable to analyse, which is the user adoption across the business. Perhaps in certain regions the system is very popular, and in other regions they haven't quite got to grips with it yet, so I think that's important. Another key part is actually celebrating project milestones, so to really look to acknowledge that the application has been installed successfully and stakeholders are using it consistently.